Hello everyone, Grandpa Ron here again. Well, today we're going to finish up the book of Genesis. We've done 49 chapters. We're now at the last chapter, chapter 50, and we'll finish up and then make a few comments at the end. Remember in chapter 49 we read about how Israel predicted the future for his sons and handed out some blessings, made his sons promise that they would take him back to Canaan to be buried. And now in chapter 50 we're going to see what happens. Verse 1 of chapter 50. Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. The perfect place for this, because the Egyptians were well known and very skilled at this. Verse 3, now 40 days were required for it, for such is the period required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. I think this is probably more like mummification because they did a lot of dehydrating and removing organs and all that kind of thing. But I find it interesting that in addition to the embalming time required, that they wept for him for 70 days. I don't know if this is a formality, or if this was sincere. It seems like it's a sincere weeping for him. To me, it indicates that Israel had gained favor. He already had favor in the eyes of Pharaoh because of what Joseph had done, saving the country from famine. But it seems as though he's acquired the favor even more while he's been there on his own. Verse 4, and when the days of mourning for him were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, if now I have found favor in your sight, please speak to Pharaoh, saying, my father made me swear, saying, behold, I am about to die. In my grave, which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan, there you shall bury me. Now therefore, please let me go up and bury my father, then I will return. So why didn't Joseph go to the Pharaoh himself? Well, the Egyptians were very clean and meticulous, and during this period of mourning, apparently Joseph may have become a little disheveled and maybe a little unshaven, wasn't presentable to go into the Pharaoh, so he had someone else do it for him. Verse 6, and Pharaoh said, go up and bury your father as he has made you swear. So Pharaoh is very accommodating. We'll see that if we continue on into Exodus, hundreds of years later, the Pharaoh at that time, when Moses is trying to get him to release the nation of Israel to leave Egypt, was not cooperative. Verse 7, so Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, and all the household of Joseph and his brothers and his father's household. They left only their little ones and their flocks and their herds in the land of Goshen. So this is a huge entourage. Don't know if Pharaoh sent all these people just to make sure Joseph would come back, but it seems like it's an honest and sincere reverence to Israel. And so he must have had a pretty good reputation there. Verse 9, there also went up with them both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great company. The chariots and horsemen may have been to protect the this group. They were going to be traveling through other countries, other areas where a lot of other tribes. Probably not a safe journey, but it conceivably could have been to make sure they came back. Verse 10, when they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they lamented there with a very great and sorrowful lamentation, and he observed 7 days mourning for his father. Now when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning and the threshing floor of Atad, they said, "This is a grievous mourning for the Egyptians." Therefore it was named Abel Mizraim, which is beyond the Jordan. And thus his sons did for him as he had charged them. So even the Canaanites, the local inhabitants, could see that this was a huge deal, something that was quite special for the Egyptians to do. Verse 13, for his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre, which Abraham had bought along with the field for a burial site from Ephron the Hittite. And after he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father. So everybody returned to Egypt after paying their respects to Israel. Now we're going to shift from Israel's death to the last days of Joseph. So let's see what happens to Joseph. Verse 15, when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "What if Joseph should bear a grudge against us and pay us back in full for all the wrong which we did him?" So they recognized that they had done him wrong, but they were uncertain about Joseph. Verse 16, so they sent a message to Joseph saying, "Your father charged before he died, saying, thus you shall say to Joseph, please forgive, I beg you, the transgression of your brothers and their sin, for they did you wrong. And now please forgive the transgressions of the servants of the God of your father." And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Now why he wept is uncertain, but it could be a variety of reasons. One, he could have been sorrowful that his brothers would not trust him to this point. That with all he had done, with all he had shown, they still were uncertain of whether he would retaliate against them. And that may have made him sorrowful. But the statement here, please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father, may have made him weep. It may have been the realization that his brothers finally had turned to the God of Israel and were actually repentant for what they had done. And so he may have been weeping in that regard, or it may have been a combination of both. Verse 18, then his brothers also came and fell down before him and said, "Behold, we are your servants." So after they sent him the message, they came in person and kneeled down before him. Verse 19, but Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid, for am I in God's place? I'm not God. Don't kneel down and worship me." Verse 20, and as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring about this present result, to preserve many people alive. God knew what he was doing, and I respect that. And so you don't need to worry. God's been taking care of me, and I've been acting within God's plan. 21. So therefore do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones. So he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Now Joseph stayed in Egypt, he and his father's household, and Joseph lived 110 years. So Joseph been there quite a long time. I think we said he was 17 or so when he was taken to Egypt. So this is quite a long time. Verse 23, and Joseph saw the third generation of Ephraim's sons. Also the sons of Machir, the sons of Manasseh, were born on Joseph's knees. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will surely take care of you and bring you up from this land to the land which he promised on oath to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely take care of you, and you shall carry my bones up from here. So he's saying, just like Israel did, I want to be buried back in Canaan. I know God is going to lead you out of Egypt someday, and I want you to take me with you. So he's showing his faith in what God has promised, and he's asking them to take him with them. Verse 26, so Joseph died at an age of 110 years, and he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. And that's where the book of Genesis ends, with the death of Joseph. Now we're going to see, if we continue on into Exodus, that God is going to be faithful to his word, and well, he can't not be. And he is going to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt and back into the promised land. But it's going to take hundreds of years. They're going to be there hundreds of years. And as we see here, they're treated well in Egypt. It's a good place for them. They're growing. They're kind of separated apart from the Egyptians at this point, that they're going to be there hundreds of years. Don't think they realize it fully or believe it fully, but they're going to be there hundreds of years. And during that hundreds of years, the mood is going to change from respect and welcome to fear and concern that they might be so powerful they might take over. So we're going to see a shift in attitude on the part of the Egyptians to the Israelis. Well, we've come a long way in Genesis, and like we said at the beginning of this study, this has been very basic, but this is a broad overview of the book of Genesis. And look how many thousands of years we've covered in this one book already. All the things that God has revealed, things that we yet haven't seen and that the nation of Israel yet has not seen. But we can see with current events going on, the stage being set for the fulfillment of some of the things that we've looked at even in this basic Bible study. Some of the promises that God made to Israel have yet to be fulfilled, but we see the stage being set for this to happen in the not too distant future. So I hope this study in Genesis has been meaningful. I'll be weighing whether to continue into Exodus or not, even though the views of these basic studies have been small in number. That was never my criteria for continuing to do this. If anyone is interested in continuing on, we'll continue on. For myself, I've learned a tremendous amount in the preparation I've done for these videos, so continuing on would be a blessing to me, because I get as much out of these books each time I read them as I did the first time I read them. So again, I hope it's been meaningful to you. I'll be making a decision over the next week on whether to continue into Exodus. If you have comments, please let me know. And in the meantime, God bless And I hope you'll watch the next one.